Welcome back. Good morning. Happy Sunday. This is the Light on Suitability podcast. I'm with my great friend and co-host, Joe Haytas. Joe's the author of the 36 Strategies of Suitability, and we are working through the book. Dean can't make it. He's on the road back from being in the prison in person with the guys that were on last week. And we talked about kind of an introductory thing, really, is strategy 6, if I can remember it, is self-discovery. And now this is where I think Joe starts to get into the nitty-gritty of exactly what are we going to discover about ourselves when we are trying to get paroled and when we're trying to live a successful life. Quite frankly, know your character defects, why it's a really important step of the 12 steps, number 1. And number 2, the commissioners ask about it all the time. And if you want to have a spiritual awakening, you're going to have to turn these over to your higher power, otherwise known as the Almighty God. So why don't you tell us, Joe, you missed last week, no big deal, it's your book. We talked about self-discovery, but am I correct in the fact that this really is starting to get into the nitty-gritty of that self-discovery?
Okay, first of all, I wasn't here last week. How did were you at Pleasant Valley? Were you at the location?
No. They Dean arranged it so that the video audio could be in the room with the class that he normally teaches, I believe. And then they were able to listen in off camera while the podcast was live. And then once we finished the podcast, the officer put all the guys on camera so we could see them and they could see us. And they were able to ask us questions.
Great. Was it a good session?
Yeah, everybody thought so, yeah.
Great. All right, congratulations.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun. Dean thought it was great. The guys all thought it was great. And that was that.
And is there any chance of the show going back there again?
I would imagine. I mean, with Dean involved, I think so. He's really, this is his passion. I mean, like you, this is your passion, like me doing parole work.
Like you too, yes. Mm-hmm.
Doing these parole hearings.
You're not only that, you're lawyering. You're very fine lawyering. So.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm underrated.
I didn't mean to go off topic.
It's fine. It's fine. This is what happens when nobody else is around to supervise us. We get off topic, go off on our tangents. No, I'm in the middle of doing a couple habeas corpus petitions for my 2 state-appointed clients. I've already done a request for decision review and a renewed request for decision review for both of them, and no dice. Maybe, who knows? Maybe I have been successful because I haven't seen what has happened again. I haven't exactly had the same situation happen again, but what happened was the commissioners came to the hearing. I think you heard about this. The commissioner came to the hearing, asked no questions of my client, had her mind made up, denied parole for 5 years for one, 7 years for the other, without asking any questions about all the strategy questions, and instead said, no, we have all the information we need from the central file and from the risk assessment. Since you just got a write up last year, we know we have all that we need to decide that matters. So I'm like, I think that In re Lawrence says you can't just talk about one thing, which In re Lawrence, it was just about the crime, right? So I was upset about that. I just thought it really lacked. I mean, did they deserve to be granted parole? No, because they had a write-up the prior year. But how did you come up with 7 years?
Yeah. They're probably going to come back and say it's discretionary because, either
How
3,
did you
5, or
exercise
7.
discretion? I know, but how did you exercise the discretion between 3, 5, and 7?
Right. Yeah,
You know?
I hear you.
So that's what I've been doing. And
Oh.
why don't you talk to me? Just
Mhm.
you've got this self-discovery. I think, I really see the flow of the book. I really see you must have put a lot of effort into how am I going to order these chapters, for one thing. But for me, I'm seeing the beauty of it, the nuance of how you've arranged this book. It really is a kind of a step by step by step. A guy picking up this book, or gal pick up this book and go, chapter 1, let me just start with chapter 1. I mean, that could take somebody months, really, just to wrap their mind around chapter 1, strategy 1, and then it could take, I don't know that it just happens and you just read the chapter and, oh, okay, I'm going to think free. Maybe, but it might take them a couple of months just to really let that sink in, and then chapter 2 and so on. So I'm really seeing sort of a method to your madness in the way you ordered this book. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, the structure of the book is beginning, middle, and end, and beginning it was just an introductory, think about what you're going to be doing. And then just starting with the basics, like about, get an education, get marketable skills. You got to do something different than you've been doing in the past. And then you got to know who you were in the past to an extent. And maybe I can use that as a liftoff here, because you have to directly address your past character defects and causative factors. But before you can do that, you have to know what they are and what you were doing at the time. And not only know it, but you have to be totally honest with yourself, brutally honest with yourself about what you were going through and why you did what you did. And it just doesn't start with the day of the crime. It goes all the way back to as early as you can remember. What was your relationship, first of all, with your parents and your family? What was going on in the household, and how did that influence you with the decisions that you made? And obviously, for probably 99%, the train went off the tracks at some place. Now, not only that, but even going deeper about why you did what you did, there's, what were the dynamics between the members of your household, and then outside your household, your peers, people you may have been playing with, but then when you went to school, who did you form relationships with? What was it about them that attracted you to them? What were you trying to get away from or suppress? Was there something going on in your household that wasn't quite right? Did you not get acceptance? Didn't you get love? Were you abused physically or emotionally, even sexually? What did you witness in the household that influenced you? Were your parents doing drugs? What about aunts and uncles, your cousins, whatever, or friends in the neighborhood? What was the neighborhood like? And how did that influence you? And what attracted you? I mean, why did you make certain decisions and not others? Why did you perhaps not sign up for Little League, but instead you did other things, that were not, did you witness a friend or even a parent shoplifting, or did they tell you to shoplift, or did they give you, let them drink some of your beer or smoke some of your pot or whatever? I've seen that. And worse, what did you normalize? It was unfortunately some, and these are just extreme cases, but they happen in all different areas. Like, for example, what did if your parents were in a gang and you normalized what they were doing and thinking that it was the right thing all along, and then you commit some serious crime and you find yourself in prison since the age of 16 effing years old, it's so tragic, but those are the cards that we're all dealt with in the hearing room and preparing for the hearing. That's what we're dealt with when we get a client. And okay, so given all that, and I hope I'm not being over dramatic, however, it's reality, So given all that, what caused us to act that way? What caused us to, think it was okay? And, somebody gave us a gun at 16 and told us to go shoot somebody. Or what made it all right, to commit an act, a sexual offense against another human being, or what caused us to go out and get drugs and to suppress our emotions for all the bad things in the environment growing up, or why did we drink every day, or smoke, or ingest drugs, or whatever we did. We normalize that stuff to an extent, and why did we do it? What and also too, with that life, how did it make us feel? Obviously drugs can suppress, but how did the crime make us feel? Did you get positive feedback maybe for the first time in your life for something you did when you've been exposed to parental put downs for the longest time? You go out there and hey, that feels good. Wow, he likes me. I'm in their group. My peers. Of course, they don't say it in those words, but their peers accept them, and this isn't so bad. And look, society's not giving me this. Of course, they don't say it in those words, but similar or feelings, and I deserve this, and I should get that, and I'll just take it. Or, and it's okay to hurt people as long as I get what I want. So all of that, it's all self-discovery. And how do you do it? Because everybody says, you got to know your past, but how do you do it? Well, there are a number of ways, but I don't think just talking to somebody necessarily would do it. But there's different methods you can use. There's journaling about your past. There's psychodrama, questions and answers, in groups, that's why you go to groups, part of it, not all of it, but part of it is to discover, who you were. And the thing is, okay, people all the time, you say, I don't have that problem anymore. I haven't had a drink in 20 years. I haven't smoked pot, whatever. And, but you've been in prison and you haven't been facing the stressors on the outside. There's going to be way different stressors out there. Oh, but everybody has it around me. I can get it anytime I want. I'm offered it. In fact, occasionally people offer it to me. Well, see, there's different coping skills for the outside, and you haven't been out there and during your life sentence. So you got to go back to that too, the things that sucked you into that lifestyle, the type of friends, the environment you were in. It must have been available, So, and that's all about finding out what was causing the train to come off the tracks. And by the way, if you don't know that, there's an easy way to find out if you want to go to your first hearing and be denied. But, commissioners always talk about that stuff in offender self-control, the second of the structured decision-making framework, whatever they call them. What do they call them? The domains. Yeah, that's their fancy word for it, domains. You know, when they first go through criminal history and offender self-control at the time of the crime, boy, do they talk about who you were. And so if you've been, no offense, but if you haven't been thinking about it, you've been brain dead, they're going to tell you right there. And they're also going to tell you why you're being denied and what you got to work on. So those are fruitful resources to go to if you don't have a clue. However, hopefully you will have a clue before your first hearing. And that is where you want to go back and journal. Journal about, just pick a topic, like your household. And what were you doing? What was going on? Who did you have contact with? How were they acting? What did you observe? How did that influence you? All of those things. Why did you become a violent person? What did you witness? Why did you think it was right? Why didn't you listen to, if you had early arrests, why didn't those early arrests deter you from future antisocial conduct? So once you find out, and that's a big question mark, okay? Because a lot of us don't know ourselves. There's probably, heck, I'm always learning about myself, but regardless. So once you find out about that, then you can address it. It's like, don't put the horse before the cart. You got to address it. And so take the groups that directly address it. Oh, but Mr. Haytas, I signed up when I first got here a year and a half ago, and I never get called. Fine. You can't expect the state to spoon feed you. So that's why there's correspondence courses. That's why you can get a book and read it. And that's why I believe you should, I'm a strong believer in journaling about your past so that you can learn who you were. And then you'll have all of that when you get into the group. When if the more you know before you get in that group about yourself, the better foundation you have for asking questions and for getting advice. And you might not even always, trust that advice. However, that's where self-awareness comes in. You got to be self-aware every moment. So get the groups, get the sport correspondence courses, whatever you need. And, they are available, especially like through PrEP, through Lighthouse 9, through, they're out there, okay? You have to look, and you have to have some ambition to look and to write to those places, okay? There's ADOVO courses too, There's the PJW courses, Parole Justice Works. And they're becoming more and more available through video on your tablet. And that doesn't say don't go get into those groups at the prison. Definitely get into them. And I know it takes a little bit of doing sometimes. There's a wait period. But in the meantime, you have all those other resources to look at. You even have this book, 36 Strategies of Suitability. I mean, I'm not saying that's the end all and the be all, but I think, it's a good background to the foundational information that you're going to need. And while I'm talking on that in my stream of consciousness, there's education over here, and then there's programming over here. And I would say, in my opinion, my humble opinion, get that GED, because you have to have a certain amount of skill to program. You have to know how to read and write. And I know there's no speaking groups in the GED, but that there's that foundation of reading and writing and learning that you're going to need when you start to program. Now, education is extremely important. I even say it in the book. But if you want to, go on and get your AA degree, but don't do it at the expense of time when you're trying to program. I of course get it and work hard. And if that's your goal, then get it. But you need programming too if you're going to get that almighty grant. If you're going to catch that golden ring, you got a program at the same time. And education helps, in just making you a better writer, a better reader, a better thinker, having a better worldview. It all comes out with education as a foundation as well. But I'm just saying, you have to budget your time, even there where you have time, where you're doing time. But you have to budget your time wisely, and that's a good practice too, because when you get out into the real world, I'm sorry, it is a real world in prison, but when you get out into the free community, I should say, you want to, you're going to have to know how to budget your time there, between work, making a living, going to groups, staying out of trouble, having whatever, your family, whoever you live with, you got to budget your time as well. So that's a good practice to get into. And then when you do program and you directly address those, you just can't sit and listen. You got to take those concepts and practice them, especially the ones that apply to you in your past. You got to really, really apply them to the extent where they become what the commissioners call internalized. They have to be inside of you. You have to, when you see something happening, you have to know how you're going to cope immediately. It's like that 911 call. If your house is burning down, automatically you call 911. So you're out in the community and, you walk into a restaurant and quite innocently you hear that song from the past and that you used to love, and it makes you start thinking about that past and going on with your homies, and you say, hey, wait a minute, you know what? No, and that's being self-aware. And you say, you know what? Let's see, I got to be at work at 1 o'clock. I'm going to eat here and I'm going to go to work. And that's called, avoidance. You avoid. That's one of the coping skills. Anyways, I'm going on here, and feel free to jump in and ask me any questions over there. Okay, Elizabeth?
Sure. No, it's important. This is we kind of gave you a chance to regroup on the self-discovery a little bit. Why don't we circle back? I hate to use that expression, but to the strategy 7, the character defects. And was it Sun Tzu that said, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. And typically, the enemy is yourself for most of us.
That's right.
Character defects, what are they? You learn what they are in 12-step programs, but basically they're mental, moral, and psychological traits that reveal personal flaws, weaknesses, inadequacies, and failings. And while the step 4 asks for a moral inventory, which means, good and bad, step 5 requires you to confess the bad. Step 6 asks you to get willing to turn all of that over to your higher power. And step 7 asks your higher power to take it. And what is often talked about is part of reform and rehabilitation. The commissioners will say part of reform and rehabilitation is understanding yourself and understanding your behavior, understanding your weaknesses, understanding your strengths, understanding your flaws. When you understand your weaknesses and strengths and flaws, you can better take steps to ensure that your judgment is well thought out and that your actions that you take are actions that don't harm others. That comes from realization of the impact of your behavior. And if you're unable to identify any weaknesses aside from I just shut down, it's important for you to understand that there's a lot more going on, and not just for our eligible parolees, but for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And so this hearing, is not only an opportunity to be brutally honest about yourself, but it's a requirement to be brutally honest about yourself, to show the panel what you've learned about yourself, meaning the eligible parolee and the past. And identifying your character defects is important because in the community, you're going to be confronted with stressors. And if you don't know what your character defects are, if you don't know the signs that can cause you to relapse to alcoholism, anger, or whatever those step one issues are, you'll be caught short, basically, is what the commissioners say. And so your ability to recognize these is really important. And so, there, you could do this in a 3-stage process. You could do it in a set 10, 12-step process. You could do it in any process you want. But the key is to identify and work through the defect. So identifying the defect, if you don't know the problem, you can't fix it. And then, for instance, talking about character defects, what are character defects? Examples of character defects. For one thing, we have anxieties, we have anger, we have arrogance, we have closed-mindedness.
Impulse.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, that's one. Impulsiveness. So anxiety, being or being dishonest is probably a big one for antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah, criminal behavior, right? Criminal thinking.
Right. Intolerant,
Mm-hmm.
greedy, minimizing, not taking full responsibility, selfishness, being controlling, judgmental, jealous is a big one for domestic violence cases, prejudice.
Lack of empathy.
Lack of empathy, being self-centered, which is a cousin to selfishness, guilt, fear. Fear is a character defect, by the way. Envy. Okay, and that's kind of a close cousin to greed. Procrastination, perfectionism is actually a character defect. Self-pity. I get that a lot with people that are addicted to drugs and alcohol. Laziness, impatience, gossiping, self-justification, resentment, hatred. So asking questions, is there one or more weakness of yours that contributed to the commitment offense, directly or indirectly? That's what will be asked. They'll ask you to make those connections. They'll ask your loved one to make those connections. Looking back on your life, is there one or more defects that tripped you up again and again in some area of your life before prison? Also closely related to character defects is triggers, and we're going to get into that in another chapter. But is there a defect presently getting in your way again and again? They ask your loved one those questions at the parole hearing. What kind of character defects do you still have? The ones that come to the hearing said, I don't have any left. They go, wow, that'd be the only one in this room, right? How might things have turned out different if you had not possessed that weakness, or had a better coping strategy for it, or had turned it over before and not gripped so hard, which is step 6. When we grip too hard, imagine how your life would be if the defect just disappeared, which it doesn't. It kind of stays there. Shine a bright light on it. Look at that defect from every angle. The more you know about it, the more you observe it and how it applies to you and your behavior, the less power it will have. And that's that's also related to David R. Hawkins and his approach to letting things go. Ask yourself, how is this defect serving me? How does it protect me? Do you use your anger to hide insecurity? Your mind, the sooner you understand how the defect serves you, the better off you're going to be. Use your strengths. So in step 4, you identify strengths and weaknesses. So you use those strengths to overcome a defect if possible. Also understanding there's multiple ways to look at any task or situation. try tackling those skills, like they say, building confidence. When you tackle a weakness with one of your strengths, that can help you build confidence. And if you're, for example, like if your defect is anger, okay, we'll sit back and use your strength of being over analyzing a situation. Maybe sit back and go, okay, let me observe this before I get triggered. And a lot of our clients do that. And once you identify these character defects, you can then have the means to develop a plan to, like, tell somebody, get willing to turn it over. Step 7, humbly ask God to remove them from you. And example, if you identified anger as a character defect, it doesn't mean that you're never going to get angry again. We talk about that a lot at hearings. It's also making assumptions that other people are doing things intentionally just to piss us off, and that's usually not the case. It's usually just our own choice to react in a particular way that really is the key to most of this. If you have some really serious issues, related to trauma in your history, you might want to seek some therapy, or your loved one might want to ask for therapy, put in a slip, maybe ask to be checked for depression or anxiety, maybe get into the triple CMS program. And don't reinvent the wheel. You're not the only person with this defect. Observe how somebody else has overcome that weakness. Maybe your loved one has been with somebody on the yard for years and years, and you just saw him, with a hot temper. And then one day you look and he's responded in a completely different manner. You can go, wait a second, maybe I want what he's got going on now. And
okay, good.
Right. And a successful parole hearing does have 95% of the time, 90% of the time, where that question has been asked, and our clients have been able to identify many character defects. And those character defects often are linked to triggers, or often included in a relapse prevention plan, then at least as an introductory paragraph as to, why do I need this plan for alcohol abuse? Why do I need this plan for substance abuse, or whatever?
Yeah, you haven't had a drink in 25 years, so why do you need it?
Yeah. They're going to be asking. They're going to be asking about that. So, back to you, Joe. Anything else about that chapter? I mean, this is kind of, again, just another teeny little stepping stone in Joe's book, where he's taking your loved one step by step by step through a journey of self-discovery. And it really started from strategy 1, think free. That is part of the journey of self-discovery. And anything to add?
No, I think you had a good take on the character defects, kind of different than mine, but the same at the same time. Different but the same. And I thought you really went into good detail about that. But I really have nothing to add. I do have some news, some other news. I guess it's related. Is if I may. I was on vacation, as you know, for the last week, but I came back.
Yeah.
And I had this waiting for me. If you can see
cool.
it. Oh,
wow.
Book.
Fancy.
It's called Inside Out: From Doing Life to Reclaiming Your Life. And,
wow.
I the first copy I got yesterday, I started reading it. And even though I wrote it, I couldn't put it down. So anyways.
Very funny. Very funny. I'm really excited. I really want to get to that book next, but we're going to plug along here. With
of course.
With Dean involved, we'll be through this book a lot faster than we have been, and maybe Dean will take over the show when I'm
What?
gone, and he can
We'll
when
take
I'm
over when
away.
you're gone.
Yeah, delivering the pups, because I don't think I'll be able to do the show on the
Oh
road.
yeah, right.
So that weekend is we're going to leave on the 21st. I might be back. I'll be back by the 6th, I would think. How many weeks is that? 1, 2. I think I'd be back by the 7th. But we'll keep you posted. It'll be 2 weekends, so maybe Dean and or you, I can just give you the login links, and you can just
Sure.
take over, do strategy. I'll be here next weekend, so we'll do strategy 8, which is interestingly enough about the 12 steps, and what we just talked about is know your character defects. Maybe we would have said put know your 12 step first, since character defects is within the 12 steps, but it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is they ask people about character defects whether or not they've done 12 steps, but really it's an expectation that people work, live, breathe, sleep those 12 steps. So
Yeah.
it's an important chapter. It's a really favorite topic of mine, has been for a while. And that's about it. We'll see you guys next week.
That sounds great, Elizabeth. And thank you for this show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Having
no, thank you. And to the 6 viewers that watch us, thank you for tuning in. I'm sure it rotates because family members watch whose loved ones are up for parole, and then hopefully they're getting parole and they no longer need to listen anymore. So it is
That's a
probably,
good thing.
yeah, it's a good thing. So, okay, Joe, I will see you next weekend.
All right. Very good, Elizabeth.
Let
God
me know if
bless
you
you.
need anything. God
Okay.
bless.
Okay. Bye now.